7. Our other selectmen will be joining us. What I've passed out to the selectmen is a draft of the changes that they discussed last night, as well as some additional information that they had requested. Specifically, the budget will reflect a reduction of a 0.67 mil, which is what my proposal had been, and a mix of expenditure and revenue changes that results in a 0.5 mil increase. So what I have in front of me, and I have some extra copies, and I know we have some interested members in the audience. I will make them available. I think we have 3. I have 3, Rick. That,
You
if
cut
could
those
share.
two cruisers out that you're talking about? 3.
I think we will get to that as we proceed. I have one more if you need it, Rick. Yep. One more.
It's too late, huh?
Okay, what I'd like to do is start actually on page numbered 5 in your packets. And on page 5, you'll see, first off, property taxes current. Because there's a reduction in the mill rate, the effect is $134,029. Now, what we're going to go through over the next few minutes is how we got to that number of 134,029, which was the reduction in the mill rate. So the effects of what was done last night and the summary tonight, as I'm repeating myself, is a reduction to the taxpayers from a 0.67 down to a 0.5. So let's start with the revenues and how that affects that 134,029. If you go to property taxes prior years, we've gone from my proposal, which was 240,000, and we increased that to 275,000. So that means revenue increases by 35,000. Property taxes, interest, and liens goes from my proposal, which was 166,500, up to 175,000, and that is an effective change of 8,500. The next change, we got this from the latest information courtesy of Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and they sent to my office what the Appropriations Committee, which is the latest information from the state of Connecticut. Now, it's not a definite, it's not the final budget, because remember, they go through a similar process. They went from the governor's budget, then the Appropriations Committee comes out with a budget, and then eventually it will come out as a final vote of the entire legislature and the signing by the governor. But the latest information says that we have a loss of $2,086 in school transportation grant. So we included that for tonight's discussion. General government, state of Connecticut, pilot, payment in lieu of taxes for state property, that showed an increase from 22,764 as of 2/28/14 up to 26,058, which means for our purposes an increase in revenues of 3,294. The Pequot and Mohegan money goes from $31,565 to $31,813, and that's an increase of $248. Under investment income, we discussed this last night. My proposal was $25,000 back in February, and as of last night and today, it becomes $30,000, which is an increase of $5,000. We had a positive result from our bank. Page 6 in your document. Payment in lieu of taxes for, property rental, we went from $320,000, we increased that $12,500 to $332,500. That's an increase in revenue. We went to recording fees, which is something we talked about last night, and we went from $50,000 to $55,000, which is an increase of $5,000 in that revenue item. Gun permits went from the proposed $4,500 to $5,000, which is $500 more revenue. Private duty, that's police private duty, went from $155,000 to $170,000, and that's a $15,000 increase to revenue. We move on to page 7. Planning and zoning hearings goes from $7,500 to $8,500, which is an increase of $1,000. So that concludes the increase in revenues, and the net increase in revenues is, got a little circle around it, $83,956. Tom, is there anything that you wanted to change from what I said or add? Okay. So Brian, we're on page 12. We just went over the changes in revenues, and now we're gonna go over the changes in expenditures. Now, this is page 12, and this is the Board of Education. Within the Board of Education office, we went to the superintendent's office today. So the Board of Education members did not review this, but in consultation with Sally's office, we found that they would like to change purchased services to $396,568. In the proposal that the board received from me, it was $408,568, so that's a reduction in expenditures of $12,000 to the Board of Education. Page 27. Under voter canvassing, my proposal, $1,500, goes down to $1,000. That's a reduction of $500. Next is page 43, Technology Department. We made an amendment to licensing software from $21,000 to $20,500, which is a $500 reduction. And we went from $4,000 in telecommunications to $3,500, which is a reduction in $500. Within the fire marshal's office, we went from a reduction of $4,300, which is part-time payroll, $42,700, down to $38,400. The conference meetings and dues goes from $1,200 to $1,000, and uniforms goes from $700 to $500, and that's it for that budget. I want to point out that in this budget, we always hope and pray that we don't have fires, but in the event that we are unfortunate enough to have a fire, this budget can change, in particular because of the need for fire marshal attention. But we will try, and I know that the fire marshal's office will, barring emergencies and unforeseen circumstances, to do our best within the budget. The next is page 51. Gas, this is Police Department. We made a reduction, total reduction of $5,000, and that came from $2,000 out of gas and diesel fuel, and a reduction in $1,250 in electricity, and a reduction of $1,250 in heating fuel. Page 55.
Miscellaneous.
Oh, I'm sorry, miscellaneous went down $500, thank you, from $1,150 to $650.
And 3 cruisers.
The next page is page 55. Within part-time payroll, this is the position that we had increased, and we reduced the increase. So there's still going to be more hours within the building and planning office in anticipation of getting more applications for development and changes to buildings and things. So the reduction from the proposal goes from $13,600 to $11,500, and that's a reduction of $2,100. On page 59, within the Highway Department, within regular payroll, we anticipated by taking a look at payroll that the position that is open will be filled by a position that will be of a lower step. So we reduced that by $5,000. Within the tree removal and replacement line item, we went from $22,500 to $20,000, and that's a reduction of $2,500 for a total of $7,500 within the Highway Department. Page 61, vehicle maintenance. We discussed this, I believe, last evening. We went from $125,000 to $119,000 in anticipation of having less need for equipment repair and rental due to the improvements that we'll see in our fleet of trucks and vehicles. So that's a reduction of $6,000 within that budget. Named vehicle maintenance. Page 71, within the snow removal, we did add some dollars to the road materials line item. We added $5,000 to that item. Page 73. This is the other portion of the part-time payroll. Again, there still will be an increase in the hours in that department, but it will be less than had been in the proposal. The proposal had said 13,600, and we're reducing that to 11,500, which results in a reduction in the budget of 2,100. And the plan consultant goes from $10,000 down to $6,000, which is a reduction of $4,000. The next page is 101. This is employee fringe benefits. And because there are some changes within the budget based on some personnel matters, we felt that we could reduce the medical insurance by $9,800. And that's reflected in page 101. Page 105, within the capital leases, for the principal, we increased the principal by $3,747 because we have added the variable sign messaging in terms of speed that the police will be using as a sign that can be on a trailer and move throughout town. And that variable message will tell drivers how fast they are going as an incentive to slow down and go the speed limit. So we are going to be improving our traffic work, and that increases the principal of the lease by $3,747, and the interest goes down by $820. Tom, do you just want to refresh for me why the interest goes down?
I mean, I changed the estimate from, I think it was 225 to 215.
Okay, so we changed the estimated interest rate to 2.15%. We had estimated it back in February at 2.25%, but in conversations with our bank, we felt that would be a reasonable number for estimating purposes. On page 107, we had a change in the transfer out to animal control, a reduction of $700. And we also see a reduction in the Parks and Recreation Department transfer by $2,600. So using the combination of revenue changes and expenditure changes, the proposed budget results in a mill rate increase of a 0.5 mil, which is, in terms of mill rate increase, in the effects to our constituents of 1.61% increase.
How much for an increase?
The mill rate, if you look at the front page, will go up by 0.5, and that is a mill rate increase of 1.61. In my proposal, it had been a mill rate increase of 0.67, which was, I believe, a 2.16. Okay. Now, did the selectmen have anything that perhaps they wanted to?
No, I think that's great, and I appreciate your work on that, and I appreciate Tom's work on that.
Thank you.
And I think it's where we need to be. So I'm ready to vote.
Okay, we don't vote in workshop, we
No, I
get
know.
consensus, but I will request that you put this into our regular meeting, which will start at 7:30. And I have a, excuse me, I have a resolution prepared for you that we'll
Okay.
proceed with.
I have one thing I just wanted to bring
Sure.
up. Well, we didn't really, I don't think we spent too much time on Parks and Rec yesterday.
Yeah.
And I did some digging, and I went back to the '07 budget, and I just wanted to look at a timeline of, what we were putting in the general fund, from the general fund to Parks and Rec. And what I noticed is back in '07, 18% of their revenue was coming from the general fund. In '08, it was 0% from the general fund. In '09, 16%, 10, 25, 11 to 12, 46%, 48 and 12 to 13, 55 and 13 to 14, and now it's 56%. I mean.
Do you know why?
No, I don't.
We
That's
can
why.
help you. Tom, did you want to explain that?
I
There's
just
a
don't know why.
But there's a
Yeah.
number of reasons, and I think it's important to point out what they are.
There was back in, pre-07, the way the systems were run, the Parks and Rec Department had before in daycare, it's like a daycare center type of activity that when Sean came in the '08 era, '08, '09-ish, was transitioned to Mary Pont to run, but the couple of things with that, I think that transition took a year or so after he came, so it was about in 10, I think. So what happened was in '06, '07, that program was flying pretty good. There was a lot of activity in that program. There were a lot of children in that program. When there was funds that were recorded as deferred revenue in that program, and so came in '08, and during the audit of '07, of '08, I noticed that there was some a large amount of deferred revenue on the books. So some revenues were getting reported as deferred instead of going into fund balance. So the year that it was a zero was because at that year I kind of forced the issue to undefer the revenue and utilize fund balance. So I kind of squashed that transfer on myself on that one because I thought there was a substantial fund balance at that time. Then when the transition, when there was a transition in Park and Rec directorship, there was a meeting of the management team associated with that, which did include the superintendent of schools. I think it's Susan, Mary, and Sean. And at that type of meeting, there was a determination by the Board of Ed where these programs were housed, that the number of children per group needed to go down. It's quite substantially. So that did transpire, and that was followed into play. So therefore, your revenue stream was cut somewhat strongly at that point.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed.
And then the revenue actually moved from Fund 12 to Fund 7, right? Fund 7, which is youth service, and that was going very well until this year when full day kindergarten came and kind of took that in, and now the kids are in full day, which is good for the children, obviously. But that is how that kind of transition. That's why you see that strange flow structure.
Yeah.
And then the steep increase in transfers in. And then also in that time period, you had the significant downturn of the economy, where things that used to be kind of self-sustaining, or had some semblance of self-sustainment, did not have that.
And I think that the transfers that were necessary for youth services have reduced. And in fact, this year, the overall budget in youth services, because there's been a change in the programming, has gone down 30%. And I know that the fund balance within youth services is healthier than it has been in many years. And that's due not only to the good management of our youth service director, Mary Pont, but it's also due to the fact that, number one, she's very aggressive with grants, and number two, effective manager, and number three, effective use of the before and after school program within the school environment. I want to expand just a little bit on the nature of the programming. When we were running the before and after school care program before '07, it was a very good program. There was a lot of information, a lot of fun activities for youngsters. As it transferred into the youth services department and in coordination more with the school, it's become more of a developmental program. So Mary Hunt used to run a program at Gildersleeve School that was primarily for developmental needs for youngsters after school. We merged that Gildersleeve program into the recreational program. And the program has become not only a recreational after-school activity, but also a time when there can be more developmental needs as well as educational needs, which there always was education and recreation, but there's also a developmental aspect in terms of Mary working very closely with the Board of Education. Within that environment, you have less children that are in the program for, again, a variety of reasons. Number one, we make sure that the ratios are proper between children and the caregivers, and also the nature of the program has changed because we have the all-day kindergarten program now for this coming year. We didn't know that last year, we know that now, so there's only children in the after-school program. So while there's a change in the revenues that are going as a transfer from the general fund for the Parks and Recreation Fund, the nature of the programming has changed, and the utilization of what essentially was, and I'm not going to use the financial term, but I'm going to say that there was a substantial fund balance that then went back into funding the program. But when you do that, of course, the next year the fund balance isn't there, and it dwindles. So, you know, in terms of this board and in terms of the support that we have for effective recreation for youth and adults, that's why the general fund is funding it.
I just wanted to make everyone aware of it, and the only reason why I bring it up is because I think that, you know, we should think about what percentage, I think it should be a percentage that the town puts in compared to the revenue that the
townspeople put into
that
it.
the towns, yeah, exactly. And so when, you know, you see how, I understand that the programs can change, you know, I understand that, you know, some switched over to youth services, but, I mean, even still, it's still a 10%, in the past 3 years, the amount of money that the town has put in has gone up 10% in the last 3 years, and that's after the changes. And I think that now at 56%, so for every dollar that we bring in, you know, 56 cents of it comes from taxpayers. I think it is a high percentage, and I think that I would be more comfortable trying to bring that down to 50%. I think that, you know, half should come from the town and half should come from revenue. I think that that would be a good goal to strive for, and, I mean, maybe not this budget, but
Okay.
in the future.
That's
And
something we can definitely strive for, and I welcome your participation within the discussions with Parks and Recreation, and I think you might, are you the liaison with Parks and Rec?
No.
You certainly could participate, and that would
I
be
just
most
might.
welcome, and I'd be happy to work with you on that, Ryan. Because
Yeah.
it would be certainly beneficial if we could do more
know.
programming. But as we have with our transfer station, as we have with youth services, as we have with Parks and Recreation, as we have with animal control, all of these special funds that get transfers in from the general fund, they are still serving the public, and they're serving the entire town. So while it's taxpayer money going to Parks and Recreation, it's also taxpayer money that goes into the transfer station, and it's also taxpayer money that goes into all of the other departments. But because they do generate, they being animal control, they being youth services, they being Parks and Recreation, traditionally, the town has utilized them as a different form of accounting structure, because they bring in revenue and they also use taxpayer money. Whereas when we're plowing roads, we don't charge people individually to plow their road. So that's all general fund money. So it's the nature of how we organize our accounting, and to have more revenue generating activities that are beneficial is something we can definitely work on, and it's a laudable goal.
Yeah, so I disagree. I don't subscribe to your theory at all. And, yeah, the department that, if you were gonna compare the two, or the seniors, and Tom, maybe you can help me, but they're not generating any revenue, and it's all money that's coming from taxpayer dollars, correct? For the
There's
most
some-
part, right?
There's some revenue generation, but.
Very little, right?
Well, then
So-
let's set it up like that. Let's set it up.
Well, I have to imagine, again, I'm not looking at numbers, but it's gotta be some 90-some-odd% that's coming from taxpayer funds, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and I
But how do
agree,
you
yeah.
come up with some arbitrary
I-
number?
I mean, I just would like to see some consistency, is my point. I just don't like seeing the trend, and there is a substantial trend, even without the changes of departments. There is a trend, and and it's not going in the direction helping our mill rate at all, it's hurting it. And so I'm saying, you know, it's not a big issue, but in the grand scheme of things, a trend, you know, signifies maybe next year, it's not 56%, maybe it's 58%, you know? And so that's what I have a problem with, and I don't know.
I think
You
it's
know,
a
Ryan,
philosophical.
there was a notion on the part of the board years ago, I don't remember how many years ago, that we wanted the Arts and Recs department to try to be self-sustaining and self-funding. And we tried to push, and it was failing. And that's also part of the reason why you see the increase. It just didn't work.
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about self-sustaining, I just think that in general, if, you know, we're gonna put in a certain amount, it should be based on, you know, a percentage of the revenue and not just whatever, you know, is missing.
I just think it's a philosophical difference. Either, you know, you live in a town, do you wanna help kids, do you wanna give them something to do, or not? And if you have to use taxpayer funds, then you have to use taxpayer funds.
I'm very anti-children, so.
I'm getting the sense of that, I understand.
Be careful, somebody will write that.
I'm kidding.
But-
It's not about that, it's just.
Well, it
that-
is, it's about what values you have and whether you wanna support
I
kids
don't
or
know,
not.
well,
So-
if the
so-
revenue's gone down, then that means the programs people aren't going to the programs. So if people aren't going to the programs, well, maybe we're not offering the right programs.
I don't know,
That's all.
I listened to this last year and comments about how Sean should have to go out and raise money and all kinds of stuff rather than doing his job and taking care of kids, and I just disagree with that. So I understand where you're coming from, I'm just saying it's a philosophical difference, so.
You know, and we
I
can put
disagree
this
with you.
on a future agenda and talk about how, or what.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Go into
it's
some
not-
detail on it. I don't, there's, as I said, I never have a problem with discussing how we manage things, what kind of goals we have, and what kind of programming that we offer. And all of our departments do have some revenue-generating activities. Public Works, driveway permits, very small amount. Within my office, the gun permits come in through us, and some of the other permits come in through us. We don't tag it quite the same as we do with some of these other departments. But we can have certainly a general discussion about each of our departments and how revenue is being generated. Just as much as we talk about expenditures, we should also talk about revenues. So, and we can talk about philosophies as well. What I'd like to do is convene the regularly scheduled meeting. So if we could have a motion to close the workshop?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Are you ready for the regular meeting, or do you need a break? Okay. So we will convene the regularly scheduled meeting, and we always start as we address our flag, Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all stand, it's in the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item is a approval of minutes from March 19, 2014. Is there a motion? Second. Brian, second by Kathy. All in favor? I apologize. Well, this will be our extra. Approval of minutes for March 19th has been finished, so we'll move on to budget workshop, March 19, 2014.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Within accept agenda, I would like to add, under public comment, number 7 to become adopt 2014-2015 budget.
Good evening, the lottery is closing in 20 minutes, if you'd like to care to check out, just wait about the time, the computer's going down in 10 minutes. Thank you, and have a good evening.
And then number 8 would become resolution, short-term land lease, and so forth. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Mark, second by Ryan?
Nope,
Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Under communications and correspondence, I did have something to give you.
Money?
Well, maybe. Let's see. We got a letter from the Connecticut Resources Recovery Authority, and this is under our transfer station. It is money. It's good news in that the CRRA has given back to the town, due to our recycling efforts on the part of our constituents, a rebate check of $6,102.90. So that goes into the Resource Recovery Fund, and there is a letter of explanation from Thomas Kirk that says, enclosed, please find 2 checks covering the rebate. One rebate check is for tons delivered from July 1/12 through November 15/12, which coincides with the end of delivery agreements associated with CRRA's Midcon project. The other rebate check, is for tons delivered from November 16, 2012 to June 30, 2013, which covers the remainder of fiscal 13 under CRRA's new Connecticut solid waste system. So a total of $6,102.90 is certainly most welcome to our fund for resource recovery. Okay. That's all I had under communications. Public comment? And we'll move on to adoption of the 2014-15 budget. And I have a resolution that I prepared for you. Pass that, please. And what we should do is double check on the numbers that I gave you. April 2nd, 2014, adoption of the 2014-2015 fiscal year budget. Resolved that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Portland hereby adopts the proposed fiscal year 2014-2015 budget in the amount of $31,561. Let me try that again. $31,561,273. Detailed as follows: Town general government, $12,311,570. Board of Education, $19,249,703. Now, did you double check those numbers for me?
I move adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Brian. Are you ready for the vote? Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom.
I would just like to thank Susan, Tom, and the board for the grand way in which we all work together for the benefit of the town. It's nice to do so without any difficulty and harsh words, and it was good working with you guys.
Thank you. We will do our best to proceed. The process, as you know, goes to town meeting the first Monday in May. And, quick, what is that date?
Turn this off.
Let's see, May 5, will be the town meeting at, it's usually at the Portland High School. We'll need to make sure that's available at 7 o'clock, May 5. It's tentatively scheduled for Portland High School at 7 o'clock. Followed immediately by the referendum, which would be Monday, May 12, and that'll run from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And of course, it's very important that everyone who is eligible, which would be registered voters as well as anyone that owns property in the town, to vote in that referendum.
Can people vote by absentee for that?
Yes, thank you. They can get an absentee ballot by going to Bernadette Dillon's office. And we'll be posting this in the newspaper, the town meeting, as well as the referendum. So, and we'll put it on our website too, Kevin. Could you remind me to make sure we get that up there? Thanks. Thank you, everybody. We're ready to move on to number 8, which is the short-term land lease extension agreement between the town of Portland and Goddess Farm. This, by the way, this piece of paper is some information from Water and Sewer that came to me from Rick and the Water and Sewer Division. But we'll get to that in a minute. Goddess Farm. Whereas the current short-term land lease extension agreement between the town of Portland and Goddess Farm for the use of land owned by the town for the growing of annual vegetable crops will expire June 30, 2014. Now therefore be it resolved that the town is in favor of renewing, I don't think that's, through June 30, 2015. Does that sound, yeah, I guess that's right, Rick? Because that would be the growing season. That's correct. Okay. Okay. So from June 30, 2014 to June 30, 2015, for a fee of $70 per acre or a total of $700 to the town of Portland for rental payment. And be it further resolved, the Board of Selectmen hereby authorizes Susan Bransfield for Selectwoman on behalf of the town of Portland to sign the one-year land lease extension agreement. There is no need for a town meeting for this because it's only a year. You only have to go to town meeting for more than a year.
Move adoption.
Seconded by Kathy. Any discussion?
Just quick one, how do we come up with these numbers?
When we did this years ago with Mr. Gata, we had already seen a lease with Mullane Nurseries, because Mullane Nurseries used to rent some of that land. And this figure, if you're looking at the figure, was based on what the per acre cost was at the time. It's a nominal fee. It's not something that certainly is of any substantive nature. We also want to have a farmer there because he's aerating the soil and doing some leveling of the land, which eventually will become ball fields. Does that answer your question?
As always.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next item is a resolution for Connecticut State Library Construction Grant. Jan, did you want to say anything about this? I know that we've already talked about this with the
Yes.
selectmen, but we're required to pass this again.
Right,
Do you want
in
to
order
come up
enter
to
a
the?
contract, yes, with contract.
Sure, there's, the state makes up little rules about things, as you know. In order to enter the contract for the work, you have to first have a contract with the state library. They're administering federal money and whatnot. And so in order to make the contract with the state library, we have to have our government resolution, whoever's in charge, resolve that you want to go into a contract. So that's basically what that's about.
Because I know we had already, I think we had already passed a similar resolution, but this
To
is
it-
subsequent to
Right.
the awarding of the grant.
Right, that was basically that you would apply, and now this is that you are going to proceed with, with the actual grant, right.
We
So
do
with the
this, I
work.
think, for Steve grants too, and other grants, I
You
think.
probably have similar things?
Similar.
Okay, so I'm glad to have such a thing on the agenda. This
I
is,
am too,
very
and
nice.
congratulations to you,
So,
Jan,
yeah,
for writing the
thank you.
grant and proceeding,
Mm.
and to our finance department for helping, and our board of directors.
Mhm.
We look forward to using a new bathroom.
Can't wait.
I think it's very important because it is not a fully handicapped accessible bathroom, and lots of folks do need that, so.
I would just like to say, in case anyone missed the correction, originally, the Middletown Press had an article about this grant, claiming that it was $1 million grant. And that was a goof up, that it was a little comedy of errors on the state. It was actually the Appropriations Committee's agenda listed various libraries, and there is a library getting $1 million grant, who probably the next day was shocked to see that theirs was $20,000. So our grant is for $20,000 toward the project. So
Thank you.
it would have been hard to match the $1 million, I think.
Golden
It was
Thrones.
a mistake, yes.
I make a motion that we move the resolution for the grant application for the Portland Library and waive the reading.
Second.
Signed by Fred. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Number 10, set the public hearing date for the 2014 Neighborhood it should be Assistance Act program. And you'll recall last year, we had one applicant, which was Zion Lutheran Church, and they once again are going to participate in this program. I understand that they did well last year, and it's an effective way for them to raise funds to do improvements to their church. So I will open it up for discussion with the selectmen, and we'll need to set a public hearing on this.
Do we have a public hearing in 2 weeks or something else?
I think we do,
it the
Kathy.
16th?
The 16th,
Yeah.
we do, yes, and it had to do with another matter, yeah. So we could probably do it at 7 o'clock, because I think the other one's at 7:15.
Do you think it's gonna take 15 minutes?
What time would you think?
I mean, I don't know. It's just, I feel like there'd be a lot of waiting in between votes.
Do you want to do it at 7:10?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
7:10. 7:10 PM here in the Mary,
On the 16th?
On the
Is that
16th.
the night that we're down Main Street?
yes, we're going to be on Main Street that night. So that public hearing will be at
Um,
7.
The other one's on capital expenditures.
Thank you, Mark. Yes. It's a public hearing. So we'll start the first public hearing at 7:10 on this matter, and then at 7:15, we'll have the capital expenditures as a public hearing, and the location will be the Buck Foreman Building. Is that right, Jan? Thank you. This room is,
Thank you, that was the only night we could have.
that's fine.
So thank you, but.
Is there a motion to move this matter to a public hearing at the date?
Some of,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the fair housing policy statement, which is something that we reiterate and bring to you every year.
Move adoption, waive the reading.
second.
Second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the next item is the affirmative action policy statement, which we also reaffirm.
Move adoption, waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And we're now on to the monthly budget report, which I believe Tom gave me your copies. In my bag. I just have copies for the selectmen tonight. I'm not sure that we have too many highlights in this. Frankly, we've been working on the proposed budget. But Tom, was there anything in particular you wanted to point out tonight? Or give the selectmen a few minutes to review?
Yeah, I'm looking over if there's any questions or concerns. I know we've been talking about all these items
Yes,
for the past few weeks now.
yes.
Is this revenue and?
Yes.
I think we can move on.
Okay. Are there any matters? You can certainly bring them to our attention. Happy to help you with that. Any appointments to boards or commissions tonight? Okay, I don't have any either. Nothing. Refunds of excess payments, there are none for this evening. I have nothing on status and committee reports tonight. Anybody else? Public comment?
We
For-
canceling our meeting next week?
April 9th will be canceled. There's no need for a meeting. We'll meet next on the 16th. And in terms of the one paper that's here that was not part of your resolutions, the Water and Sewer Commission did recommend the sewering of Great Hill Pond area be considered in the scope of work with St. Clements to service both locations. And the commission also recommends a complete audit of the finances of water and sewer departments, and that rates be adjusted immediately to balance the budget in these funds as required by the town.
You want an external audit, by an outside auditor?
Rick, do you know?
I see no reason to have an audit, do you, Tom?
There's an audit every year.
But an additional audit? Are they looking for an additional audit?
I didn't get the sense that they were looking for an external audit or additional audit.
I'm not sure why they would,
Maybe they're not aware of that.
I think they're looking for the increase in fees. I think that's what they're looking for, to cover that's the cover the position.
a complete audit.
When you respond back on that, there is an audit done every year.
I can provide them with a copy of the audit at the next meeting.
That'd be good, Rick.
I'll do that. I'm gonna say anything on the St. Clements thing to give you a heads up.
Sure.
It might.
Yeah, that'd be
I don't know
good.
if you're even
It's general
aware.
informal discussion,
It kinda
sure.
caught me off guard when you said something, and I'm thinking,
Well,
what the heck
that's
is
in
that?
your yeah, this was written March 18th. Rick.
Yeah, very briefly, I don't know if any of you were even aware. We, Susan and I, have been meeting over a long time with St. Clements about sewering St. Clements. They're looking at a huge expansion, and they've met with us and wanted us to try to see if we could facilitate sewering them, carrying a line to our sewer plant. And unfortunately, the logistics are just, they don't work economically, whereas East Hampton is a very short distance from them. So after a couple of years or more, probably, of discussion, St. Clements met with us and said that they, in fact, they want to move forward with this huge expansion, which I think would be a very good thing for the town. And they unfortunately, or fortunately, are going to run a line to the East Hampton sewage treatment plant. With that comes, so Jim Lynch and I attended a series of meetings with St. Clements, East Hampton, and St. Clements Engineer to look at how this could come about. And it's a bit unusual. Basically, there would be a forced main that would run from St. Clements a short distance within Portland and then into East Hampton on Route 66 to their sewage treatment plant, which is kind of opposite where 16 comes in. St. Clements would like Portland to be responsible for that line because they believe that the state DOT would not want a private entity running or maintaining a sewer force main within a state road, and I suspect they're right. Plus, I think.
What does that mean, responsible for it?
It would mean that we would maintain it. If there was a problem, it would mean that Portland would be the owner of it for all intents and purposes rather than St. Clements. It's kind of an unusual thing. We haven't solidified anything, so that's why I think it's important that I at least
It is.
kind of let you know where we're at. We're at a stage now of one of three agreements in draft of the first, and let me, bear with me for a moment. So the part about the Great Hill Pond sewering, I got to step back. So back in 2005, when East Hampton, I believe it's the East Hampton Colchester Regional, it's a regional
Yes.
deal, and they upgraded their sewage treatment plant to accommodate Colchester, Marlboro, I don't even know who's all in there. We were invited to participate in some of the funding that was available, and basically our end was, as they upgraded their plant, they wanted to know if Portland was interested in having any capacity in that plant for those upgrades. And we said, yes, we were. We wanted 16,000, I'm winging it here, 1,000 gallons of capacity for St. Clements in the future, should they need it. And we also wanted the possibility to sewer the Great Hill Pond area, which is probably in need at some point. So what we did is we have reserved at East Hampton's plant, or the regional plant, I believe it's either 66,000 or 64,000 gallons per day for that plant. We have that. That we've had since 2005. So then now comes St. Clements within the last 2 months and says, hey, we are going to move to expand our facility, and we are going to need 200,000 gallons a day in the end. God knows when that will be, but it's a huge expansion. We'll ultimately need 200,000 gallons a day of capacity in the plant, which means that Portland, will have to request of East Hampton, which they say they will grant, is a request to increase our capacity from 66,000 to 200,000 gallons. Still with me here? In that process, they said to me, do you still want to reserve the capacity for the Great Hill Pond area? And I said, almost assuredly, I'm not the end one to make that decision, but I could pretty much tell you that, yes, that would probably be something that we would want to do. That affects the agreement we have with East Hampton on how much we request of an expansion. So I brought this forward to the Great Hill, to the Water and Sewer Commission at their last meeting, and I said, kind of the same thing I said to you without repeating it. And I indicated that I tentatively said we assuredly would want to hold a reserve for the Great Hill Pond area. However, well, then they said, well, we'd like to coordinate that connection of Great Hill Pond with the St. Clements force main. And I kind of indicated that probably was not, probably is not going to work out too well for a number of reasons. Time. Number two, and primarily, is if you recall, some of you were on the board when we went through a series of proposed expansions of sewering, for example, the Riverside area, the Clearview Drive area, the Bel Air Estates. It's quite a long process. It requires engineering. it requires a fair amount of money to come up front to determine what the assessments will be and how you'd run the lines, and I tried to get, so I conveyed that to the water and sewer, that it might not work that way, but I would bring their recommendation to you, the board. That's that part of it. And then what's going to come forward to you folks in the future, there are 3 agreements, irregardless of the Great Hill Pond area. We're gonna need an agreement with East Hampton to request 200,000 gallons a day rather than 64,000 gallons a day. We're also gonna need an agreement with East Hampton to transport and maintain the line that goes there. And we're also gonna have to come up with an agreement between the town of Portland and St. Clements with regard to the design of the facility, who's gonna do what. This is very preliminary, but at least I won't shock you when I come to you. So that's the gist of it. I don't know if you have, go ahead.
Can I just ask one thing? Does East Hampton have the water sewer on Depot Hill Road in East Hampton?
No.
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 So it'd have to go
The
probably up that
the
route
plan
or
really,
no?
what I looked at back a number of years, 2008, 9, when we looked at Great Hill Pond area, I looked at running, there's two ways you could get sewerage from the lake to the East Hampton plant. One would be up over Depot Hill Road. That's the shortest way, and it would get you in kind of the back door. The other way would be to run up and down Penfield Hill Road, which again, there's a philosophy here, you'd be able to serve
Pick up
more people. And I've spoke with, the sanitarian and I discussed this at length, as where there were sewer failures and one thing or another. It kind of never went anywhere because the cost, and I'm winging it here, the cost either way was just the force line was in excess of $1 million, it was $1.5 million, $2 million. That doesn't include the sewering of the, so the bottom line of probably what you would find if you went through the same process that we went through with the River to Cheetah Road area is the assessments then with 33% money for planning, I think were like around an average of $9,000 a residence, just their assessment. That was a long time ago. That was 1999. Probably, and that was with some funding. So probably what will happen is when you hold, when we come up with the assessments, for example, for the Great Hill Pond area, the assessments probably, individual assessments probably will be more than double that. Not that it's not a good deal, but they'll be fairly large and maybe cost prohibitive for the folks out there. I don't know how it'll go. If you remember, we had some real good numbers on 3 areas of town and only 1 went for it. So I kind of spoke to the Water and Sewer Commission. So that's one part of this thing. The other part is St. Clements. I'll be back.
Real quick question, Rick.
Sure.
On that stuff, that's right. The difference between the force lines and the big one, it's the 60.
A gravity line or force line, this is a case where you're going uphill and you know what they say, you can't,
Yeah.
it doesn't
So
go.
Is it like a lot larger pipe too?
Yeah, a force main is typically small, probably is gonna be 6-inch, and there's without getting technical, there's a whole host of issues that have to do with it, which is why we have to spell out an agreement. Basically, what's gonna happen is over 30 years, the flow is gonna increase. It's gonna start out real small and increase, and there's such a thing when you design this as what they call cleansing velocity. So you, typically with a small flow, you have a real small pipe so it stays clean. With a bigger flow, you have a bigger pipe, and the problem we're having, there may be 2 pipes run, because you won't be able to do it all with one size pipe. But it's a smaller pipe, it's a force, it's pumped.
So
It's pumped.
one's like the 16 is, we'll say, 4-inch.
One would be maybe a 4-inch, the other would be an 8-inch. Not much any bigger than that.
Okay, we put it in the same trench when you go to.
Well, that gets interesting when you get to maintenance. So there's a whole host of technical issues that we really do need to iron out, and that's what has to do with the agreements that it's gonna come. It's technically a little bit challenging,
Yeah.
very challenging.
Thank you.
St. Clements is working very closely with the town. Obviously, from Rick's report, he and the supervisor of our sewer operations have been attending meetings. They've had me at meetings, and Kathy Richards went to a meeting with me as well to see some of their overall development plans. So we're working very closely with them, and hopefully come to fruition very soon. They do have an approved site plan for the hotel/inn, I believe. So they've also worked with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And in addition, in East Hampton, they have a marina and they have a pavilion. It's at the bottom of Depot Hill Road, or next to Depot Hill Road. And they are looking to do some activities there as well, whether it's receptions and things of that nature.
One thing I do want to add.
Yes,
I think it's
yes,
important
Rick.
for all you or anybody who's watching. St. Clements is going to bear all costs.
Yes.
Associated with the design, the legal, the construction, so it's.
They're working with the town so that they'll get the necessary statutorily required approvals. But in terms of the cost, St. Clements Foundation, they pay for everything. It's all on
They'll
there.
need the approvals of both towns.
I believe they will, and, Mark, the regional sewering authority, I'm not.
Really?
Well, that's a regional, plant that is in the town of East Hampton, but they have sewage from Colchester. Do they have Marlboro yet?
I think
Rick?
some, I'm not sure if they got any from Marlboro yet, but
Yeah.
it's planned for.
At the plan for it, and then East Hampton.
Colchester.
Colchester. Oakham Dock, thank you. That's right, it's not Depot Hill, it's Oakham Dock, thank you. Right?
When you're done with our St. Clements sewage, I just had a quick point. Are we all set?
Yes.
Yeah. Not to belabor it, but just a suggestion that as we look for some budget efficiencies in the future, and I thought the discussion about Park and Rec, for example, was good. I'd like to explore if we can hold maybe a discussion sometime in the future about trying to find possible efficiencies by looking at some of the departments and some of the town services to see if we could have perhaps economy of scale. We might find as we look at some of the services we provide, there might be a more
Sure.
efficient way to do it. And
Sure.
I think we all have some thoughts on that.
Sure,
Are you
that'd be
talking about
helpful.
regionalization of other towns?
No, not specifically, although someone might bring that up. I was just thinking of looking at the department or the way we deliver a service to see if perhaps we should go in a different direction, or if there are cost savings or.
Well, I think there's also things going on in some of our departments that you may not be aware of, and I think it would be helpful to inform you of some of the
Sure.
things that happen in the town clerk's office and in the collective revenue, and there may be some things that come out of that discussion that could be helpful to us in terms of efficiencies.
Yeah, I
don't-
imagine some folks are looking for retirement possibilities. It'd be good to know where we are with some of the departments and
Sure.
retirements.
Sure.
I'm just looking to save
And
some
the
money
needs,
if we can.
the needs and the changes that may have occurred. And there are a lot of things that are happening, particularly in the area of technology and in the area of how we are delivering services. In the course of my week, in the course of a lot of our directors' weeks, they go to continuing education, police, public works, technology, fire department, and there are a lot of technologies, not to mention a lot of other practices that are being recommended out there. And I think the only way you're going to know a little bit more about that is if they come in and talk to you. I know they tell me quite a bit of information, but to convey it to you, I think would be helpful. So
It
we'll
would
try
be.
to arrange that, and I think it'd be very informational.
Good.
But and I think you all see this in your professions, the way technology is changing. It has changed the face of not just your offices, but the face of government as well. Public safety, as well as public works, library, there's just so many changes going on. And customer service as well. So I'd be happy to do that. It's a good suggestion. I do not have anything under executive session, and I do not have anything tonight on any follow-up items, so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Need public oh, you asked already.
I think I asked.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to start on next year's budget on Monday.